Action! Welcome back to Show and Tell. I'm Billy. Today we're going to be talking Barbie, and we're going to be talking about 3 of my works in progress. So don't go away. I'll be right back to share. You can tell by the little marquee that I have and by my clapboard that movies are a big part of my life, and they have been since early childhood. Since about the days that I had the original 1959 Barbie. That's probably about the time that I started going to movies. So as a lifelong movie lover, I joined a movie club during the pandemic. It's an online group. We meet over Zoom every Monday at 3 o'clock New York time. And each week we talk about art films. So they're not the blockbuster films. They're not films like anything from the Star Wars franchise or superheroes, Marvel Comics. They're films that are created by serious directors like Martin Scorsese, like Alfred Hitchcock, like Fellini, directors of that ilk. So it's unlikely that we'll ever talk about the Barbie film, but we did recently watch a Greta Gerwig film called Frances Ha. She co-wrote it and acted in it. It's a black and white film. It's really interesting. If you haven't seen it, it's kind of like a Woody Allen-ish homage to New York, which as a New Yorker, I always enjoy. I love to see the places and see if I can identify them. Anyway, let me talk about my knitting and then stick around because I'm going to talk more about Barbie after that. So first up, I wanted to show you the progress that I've made on my Dacite by Carol Feller. Since this is right in front of my face, these little green stitch markers I put when I separated for the sleeves. So I wanted to make sure that when I go to measure my sleeves, that I would start from the same measuring point. So I have one here and I have one on the opposite sleeve. And I did that when I went around to pick up these stitches to knit down the sleeve. So this is how far I've gotten on the sleeves. I've done both sleeves. They're not exactly the same length yet, but approximately. And now I'm just trying to figure out what I want to do for the cuff. I don't know if I want to do the cuff in garter stitch, which is what the pattern calls for, or if I want to do something very loopy. I'll insert a picture here to show you what I'm talking about. I'm just at the beginning of swatching for the loop texture. I'd love to know what all of you think. If you think I should just go plain garter, and you could look at Dacite pictures on Ravelry, or if you think I should embellish it by making this little loopy design. I thought the loops might make it look like Persian lamb. If any of you had grandmothers or great-grandmothers who had Persian lamb coats, it's that real curly, tightly crimped fur, and it's often in this kind of color. Boy, do I wish I had one. A vintage one, of course. Anyway, I have a stitch holder tube down in the bottom because I'm not sure yet just how long I want to make this. I'm pretty sure I'm going to go longer, and there will be a border down here of either the garter or this loop thing. So I could go, just really basic and keep it simple, or I could embellish it a little bit. Would love to hear your thoughts. So I've made quite a bit of progress on this. I'm loving the yarn. I was reluctant at first when I bought it because I thought it was a little bit on the rustic side, which it is, but it has a certain kind of a softness to it. And for an outer garment, I think it's really appropriate. I think it gives it good body. I wanted to be sure that the collar wouldn't have so much drape that it would just be floppy. I think this will stand up to staying in position the way it ought to. So I'm very happy. It's knitting up rather quickly. It's only been a few weeks, and I've hit the pause button on it because I wanted to swatch for that loop thing. And I've picked up some of my other languishing projects. So I wouldn't exactly call them UFOs. They're whips because I do come back to them from time to time. So let me grab them. Not a whole lot of progress made on my Ibiza lace scarf. I've been showing it to you like this to see how much further it reaches my shoulders. You can see I haven't really progressed much. I do have it wrapped a little bit around this other sweater, but this is the project that I carry with me when I go on the subway or on the bus because it's very portable. It folds up into just this, and here's my bag. My instructions are on here, and the cone is there, and this goes in there, and the whole thing is like that. And this fits into my tote bag. So it's very portable for me, and I only have to look at one line of instruction at a time. And once I get that, I can sort of progress and refer to it a little bit. It's not that unwieldy. I think I also have it on Knit Companion, which I could hold my cell phone in my hand, but I'm happier just reading my instructions off that little booklet. The yarn I've mentioned before is from Color Mart. It's a cobweb weight, and I'm on a size, I believe I'm on a size 3 needle. These are ergonomic needles that I bought last year at Rhinebeck, and they're wood, so they're not very slippery. I found at the beginning of this, I was working on my ChiaoGoos. The stitches are so tiny, so fine that things were slipping and sliding, and it was a little bit too much pressure on my hands to keep everything in place. So I opted to go with these. They were rather expensive, but a good investment. And I think it's a size that I'll get future use out of. Speaking of Rhinebeck, is anybody planning to go? I'm sure many of you are. I'm not sure how I'm getting there. Last year was just a total disaster for me, and I don't want to repeat that. So I really have to figure out a better plan. But would love to know if any of you are going, because I would want you to look for me. I'll be on Podcaster Hill. Just ask anybody where that is and they'll direct you. I have made more progress on For the Rink or the Links. I think I was about in here last time. So both the front and the back are the same until you get further up, like to the underarm. So I'm not sure yet if this will be the front or the back. I guess after I do both of them to that point, I'll compare and see which one is a little better constructed or where my stitches are more even. And then I'll continue knitting that one according to the directions for the front. But just to recap, I have a provisional cast on here, which I cast on directly to a size 1 US needle, so that if I decide that I want more ribbing when I try this on, I can continue to knit down in that direction. And I had done that on my previous version, the one that I had to rip out. So this is recovering from a train wreck of having knit an entire sweater, and now I'm redoing it. I'm reluctant to show you the back. When I was knitting it using the stranded method, I wasn't embarrassed at all. The back of it was just lovely and beautiful. Now I have a million strands hanging off the back. I don't want to weave them in as I go, because just in case, I'm a little bit gun shy now, just in case I would need to rip this out again, I don't know if it would be even possible with everything woven in. So I'm leaving a million ends, which I don't want to show you. I also have a bunch of bobbins hanging in the back. So right now the wrong one has 2 colors, the red and the brown. I've got bobbins all the way across in both of those colors. Some of my bobbins are vintage bobbins. Let me show you one. When my mother-in-law passed away and I was going through her knitting supplies, I found that she had the same vintage bobbins that I had. I guess back at that time, this was in the 80s that I purchased these. It was probably the main thing that was available. They're really great. The yarn, let me demonstrate for you. The yarn just snaps in and out. So after you're done knitting your 4 or 5 stitches in this, you can wrap the yarn back up on here and just snap it into place. And it's never hanging too far away from your project to be able to get tangled with anything else. Now that's provided that you stick to that plan and always rewind it, which frankly, I don't always do. So every once in a while, I do have to untangle a few of them. But in the scheme of things, this is a project that's going to take many months. So a couple extra minutes here or there is negligible. I am hoping when I block this that the stitches will settle down. I had a hard time with this yarn. I love the yarn very much. It's super soft. I mean, it's not cashmere soft, but it's just lovely for something that's 100% merino. It's John Arbin knit by numbers. Can't recommend it highly enough. My only gripe is that when you rip it out, which of course we never want to have to, it's a little harder to recondition it. So it still stays a little bit curly. I've tried a few different ways. I've tried hanging it up. That seems to work a little bit better. But that is the reason that my stitches are most uneven. And of course, now I'm doing intarsia, so there's always that, twisting of the colors. It does make for a little bit less even, less consistent knitting, but I'll readjust some of these stitches where the connections are between 2 colors after I'm all done, and probably after it's blocked, I'll look over to see if there's anything that I can kind of smooth out. But I had put it down for a while. I'm really happy that I've come back to it, because once you get back in the groove and once you have all the bobbins set up, it's kind of smooth sailing. It's just the setting up of all the bobbins and getting the yarn onto all of them that is a little bit of a production, but I think it's worth it. Don't you? Don't you think this is going to be just smashing fabulous sweater? I mean, I hope so, because I already spent about 3 or 4 months making the first one, which was almost complete, sleeves and all. And now I'm months into this, but I'm not working on this monogamously, as you know. Anyway, that is all the knitting for today, but I promised you a lot of Barbie. First of all, I didn't say anything about this sweater. It's the Barbie colors. This is my Schiaparelli Bona sweater. Let me stand up and show you the Barbie t-shirt. The Barbie t-shirt that my lovely friend Deborah bought for me. We went to see the movie together last night. I'll insert a few pictures along the way here of some screenshots that I took of the film. If you haven't seen it, it's adorable. It's not a movie for little girls. It's really for those of us who had the original 1959 Barbie. So this is a little bit what I wanted to tell you about. It's a story. I mean, this is going to be a random walk kind of a story. I'm going to digress a lot. Growing up in Philadelphia, I lived just down the street from Uncle Harry's toy store. So it was really convenient for my mother to walk me up to the corner and we could shop for toys. Now, she didn't overindulge me, but when the buzz of Barbie coming out hit our house, of course, we got one of those Barbies. So I had the blonde version with the little curly bangs and the black and white striped bathing suit. And let's not forget the small push pins that you stuck into her ear. There was a hole there. I don't know if anybody else remembers that. But today, that would be such a big no-no. There are laws in the United States for small parts in children's toys, and things are graded according to the age. Today, that pushpin earring would never pass the test. It would be so unsafe to give a child a pin that they could prick themselves or poke their eye out, or, oh, I don't even want to think about the things that kids could do with those. But I never did, because I was not an imaginary play kind of girl. The kinds of toys that I was more interested in playing with were games like Lie Detector, which was my favorite. It involved deductive reasoning. I mean, the toys that set me up for a future as an engineer, construction toys and strategy games. Somehow for me, dressing a doll, making up things for her to say to her other doll friends, just didn't resonate with me at all. So I had a Barbie, but my Barbie stayed in pristine condition, a lot of the time spent in the box. If only I had her today, I know she'd be worth a fortune, because the box was in mint condition and the doll was in, if not mint, excellent condition. It turns out my cousin's father owned the company that sold Barbie at the New York Toy Show. It seems like Mattel had, instead of doing their own in-house sales, they hired other people to sell for them, which continued for 26 years until my cousin's father sold his company to Mattel, and then they brought the selling portion of their business in-house. So it's so possible that Uncle Harry, who owned the corner toy store, may have gone to the big toy show in New York. It's only about an hour and a half on the train from Philly to New York. He might have come into New York to attend the big toy show where a lot of toy purchasing was done. There's an interesting building, maybe someday I'll take a walk and show it to you, on 23rd Street, the Toy Center. Lots of toy companies used to have showrooms there. Anyway, I'm kind of hoping that Uncle Harry bought Barbies from my cousin's father. That would be like such a nice story. What else can I tell you? Another cousin of mine, now that everybody knows that I'm, on a little Barbie, a momentary Barbie kick, another cousin of mine said I believe it was her daughter, had a friend growing up who became I think a top-selling author. M.G. Lord is her name. And she wrote a book called Forever Barbie. And it's all the backstory. It's sort of like the unauthorized biography of a real doll. I think that's her subtitle. I will put a link in the show notes where you can go and purchase that book. But at least take a look at it. There are some excerpts available. And I started reading it and I was just sucked right in, because it's all the stuff, it's all the backstory that you wouldn't otherwise know. So perhaps and if you've seen the film, you would certainly know that a woman in Los Angeles named Ruth Handler was the person who invented the Barbie doll. Her daughter's name was Barbara. I guess they called her Barbie. And they also had a son named Ken. But she essentially knocked this doll off from a German doll named the Lilli Doll. It was a gag gift for men based on a comic character in some German tabloid. And evidently Lilli was not a nice girl. Her raison d'etre involved swapping sexual favors for money. I'll put a picture here so you can see the Lilli doll and how very much like the original Barbie she looked. that's not plagiarizing? I don't know. I mean, doesn't seem strictly kosher to me. So in case you're not aware of this, the name Mattel was a combination, I think they call this a portmanteau, of Harold Matson and Elliot Handler. So they took the Matt from Matson and the L from Elliot. Those were two of the company's founders, and they merged them into Mattel. They've used the same device for Barbenheimer because both the Barbie film and the Oppenheimer film have come out together. A lot of people are doing a double feature, seeing both of those. So yes, to digress yet a little bit further, I haven't seen the Oppenheimer film yet, but I will, because number one, it's a film, and number two, my father worked on the Manhattan Project, but that's another story for another time. So an additional movie connection. Ken, named after the son, Kenneth Handler, and his wife, Susie, owned one of the two brownstones that past mayor of New York City, Mike Bloomberg, owned. Number 17 and number 19 East 79th Street. I don't know if he's still living there, but those were his homes. Number 17 was purchased from the Handlers. Ken Handler himself was a film director and the son of Ruth and Elliot. So all these connections to movies and Barbie and Ken and Mattel and all of that. Furthermore, an alumna of my alma mater, Columbia University, is now a Barbie. Mariana Costa Checa, class of 13 from the School of International and Public Affairs, is the CEO of a company called Laboratoria. It's a social enterprise that strives to give Latin American women from low-income backgrounds access to careers in technology. She was among 20 extraordinary role models honored with Barbie dolls in their likeness. And I'll put a picture here. She's a native of Peru, and she was part of the 2019 Barbie Shiro. I'm not sure how you even pronounce that word. Shero. I ought to know though, right? They did a Shiro collection. But wait, I have more. Just up Fifth Avenue from my favorite museum, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, which I've often mentioned in this podcast, is a small jewel box of a museum of Ronald Lauder, Estee Lauder's son. It houses the famous, very famous 1907 Gustav Klimt portrait of Adela Bloch-Bauer, which was the subject of the film called A Woman in Gold. You might remember Helen Mirren played the character. It told the story of the international legal battle to get restitution of the painting that had been looted by the Nazis. So this painting not only has the movie tie-in, but there's an added Barbie connection here too. A decade ago, Mattel created the Museum Barbie collection. It included a Barbie inspired by Adela Bloch-Bauer. And I'll insert a picture here. It's a really lovely one. And I would think that these are collectible items as opposed to dolls that you would give a child to play with. So that wraps it up for today's episode. You will be happy to know, if you've stuck around till the end, that I am now nailing down details of a future episode with Sydney Craybaugh. You may know her as Squidney Knits. She's one of the most fantastic vintage knitters out there. So I'm really looking forward to having a conversation with her. Subscribe to this channel so you'll be sure not to miss it. Take care, everyone. See you next time.